that's when you start to instill this trust. You know, he or she's not asking us to do something that they wouldn't do themselves, not putting us in harm's way without mission or, you know, weighing all the options. And I just love that he said that, because to me, he still doesn't see himself as a hero. He sees the people he led as heroes.
Welcome to Talk with History. I'm your host, Scott, here with my wife and historian, Jen.
Hello.
On this podcast, we give you insights to our history-inspired world travels, YouTube channel journey, and examine history through deeper conversations with the curious, the explorers, and the history lovers out there. Now, today we don't have any guests. It's just Jen and I, but we're going to talk about our video that's actually coming out tomorrow. So the video that's coming out tomorrow is going to be on Band of Brothers. And so, Jen, why don't you tell us a little bit about what we are talking about tonight?
So, when I went to England, I made a point to go to Aldbourne, England.
Right.
And that was because that's where the Band of Brothers were from September to June, right before D-Day, right before they jumped into France for D-Day. And they trained there, they lived there, and I just wanted to visit there, pay my respects, see it in person. It's a place that doesn't get a lot of attention when it comes to Band of Brothers. People are very interested in after D-Day. You know, some people are interested in stateside, right? Where they were at in training in Georgia and jump school.
Sure. Yeah, because in the series, now I didn't watch the full series with you, but I kind of watched it on and off. I mean, they spend a good part of the series in training camp.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's where they kind of form in the beginning. That's where they form their group.
Yeah,
and
their
cohesiveness. Group. And it's jump school, so it's you get weeded out, right? Because this is before SEALs, before the spec.
So you see them kind of, and you as the audience kind of get to grow closer to them.
Yes.
And so why'd we choose Aldbourne?
So we chose Aldbourne because this is where they train before they jump for D-Day. And they chose this area. I mean, people go out and intel, and of course, England was an ally, but they said the terrain was like France.
Oh, okay.
And so if they could practice jumping there, and that's what they did, they practiced jumps every day. If you could practice jumping there, you would be more ready for the terrain of France. Now, I've heard it wasn't really like the same terrain. More than likely, it was an area that could logistically hold them all. Yeah. That's probably the biggest reason why it was chosen. And you could get an airfield in there and not have to, and it was far enough away, close enough to Normandy. And you'll see on our map of Walk with History, we show you what Aldbourne is in reference to Normandy. So they're
not that far as far as the crow flies. So, and the other big reason that we chose Aldbourne is because you were in London.
I was in London.
Right. So you were, how long did it take for you to get from London, driving on the left, right? An American driving in England.
Yes.
How long did it take you to drive out there?
A little over an hour, and it's very scary because it's, as you know, the roads are narrow, and I'm in a smaller car, and it was a stick.
Yeah, once you get off the main freeways out there, I mean, these are tiny little English roads, right? You're driving through some farm country sometimes,
and I'll be honest, I drove past it first,
oh, really?
And then I was like, I have to turn around, and you can't really turn around, you know. And I was nervous, and you have to turn around with a stick, but I finally found my way back, and once I was parked, I was like, okay, I'm here. I'm gonna figure out where everything is from here.
And I didn't realize how long they actually spent in Aldbourne.
Yeah, so they leave America in the beginning of September.
Yeah.
And they leave, and I think I talk about this a little because Dick Winters sees the Statue of Liberty as they leave in New York City, and they leave on a ship, the SS Samara, and he wonders if he'll see it again. He wonders what's ahead of him. He's just very pensive and thinking about what the future holds for him. They get into Liverpool, and about September 15th, and then they make it over to Aldbourne closely after that.
They kind of set up camp there.
So they're there September to June.
Yeah, it's 8 months.
This is the longest time they're in one location. Yeah. And when you think about it too, these huts that they're in, we'll talk about this later, they're in there through the winter.
Ugh.
And they're not insulated.
Oh my goodness.
And this is England. So you can think about, like, it was probably rough going, especially with the snow and all of that. But so that's, the unknown. This is probably for a lot of these gentlemen the first time going overseas.
Sure.
First times being in Europe.
Well, and I didn't, right? So deployments nowadays are still pretty long, right? Upward, the average on the Navy side is probably 6 months. I'll say the Air Force, maybe it's like 3 or 4 months for you guys. I don't know. I honestly don't.
I always
don't
give
really
Air
know.
Force a hard time.
I mean, the Army, sometimes their deployments can last up, upwards of a year.
Yeah.
But here's these guys leaving the States. They spend the first 8 months of being gone for probably a couple years.
Yeah.
Right? Possibly for some of these folks. First 8 months just sitting there, right? The first month they probably spent in transit. Then another 8 months there. Then there was D-Day, and there's everything after that.
Everything after that, all the battles.
These guys are gone for a couple of years. It puts it a little bit more into perspective when you get to go there, and you're like, they lived here.
Yes, this
for
was their
almost
life.
A year. Yeah,
this was their life, and so when you think about it, too, they're leaving jobs, families behind, and they're there. Just integrating into the town. A lot of the gentlemen said the town was very like a Hollywood set, which you would consider like a quintessential English, town, village. It's what it is. It still looks like that today.
Yeah. So tell the our listeners and our viewers kind of what it was like to be there nowadays, because you were there back just August, so a couple months ago.
It was nice. Like it is a quintessential English town. It was a very nice town, very welcoming. I think people knew why I was there the minute I got out of my car. I mean, there's a marker on the wall that marks the Crown Pub for the 101st Airborne and Band of Brothers, and it was their meeting place. And even when I asked if I could film in there, they were very open and, yes, please come in and film and look around. And so people were very nice. But you can see how they came in and just kind of took over some of the bigger buildings.
Sure.
Because when you think about where the command post was, I almost missed that place. The maps are not very good for that area, and it's right on that main road that I wasn't going to get back on. But as I was leaving, I saw it, and I was able to stop and take the video of it. And our video will open up with me there. But that's the command post. And that, when you think back on Band of Brothers, that's where the major is, the colonel, that, when the NCOs come. And
it's the mutiny scene.
The mutiny
so
scene.
That's what everybody remembers. So when I was looking it up, this was actually very easy to find because that mutiny scene, and if you remember back to the Band of Brothers, series, if you watch the series, this is when the NCOs, the non-commissioned officers, they kind of get together and they're like, listen, we can't follow whatever the lieutenant.
They don't want to follow
David Schwimmer's
character.
So they were like, okay, we're all going to write this. We're going to do this together. We're in it together because they knew that I think he was still Captain Winters at the time. I don't even know. He was captain. He was lieutenant.
Yeah, he was lieutenant.
But so that's where they're getting yelled at, and that's where the colonel, he basically says, okay, you're out of my company.
I ought to have you all shot. This is nothing less than an active mutiny while we prepare for the goddamn invasion of Europe. Sergeant Harris?
Sir.
Turn in your stripes, collect your gear. You are hereby transferred out of my regiment.
Sir.
Get out. Sergeant Ranny?
Sir.
You consider yourself lucky I'm only busting you to private. All of you NCOs have disgraced the 101st Airborne. You can consider yourself lucky that we are on the eve of the largest action in the history of warfare, which leaves me no choice but to spare your lives. Now get out of my office and get out of my sight. Get.
Yeah, so it's a big deal. That's where the command post was, and we show that in the video.
And people might wonder, like, why is he so mean? This is really what's happening. Why isn't he listening to them? And honestly, from an officer perspective, you can't let people think this is the way to do business, that this is okay. It's okay to write a letter and, I'll listen to you and we're going to change it. So that's why he does that. Now, granted, he is listening to his men, because we do know that he will replace Sorbel. He'll replace him, and he will move Winters into a more leadership role.
And that's where it's the clearest signal there.
Yes.
I think
But
they
you
have a scene
can't-
later where he's talking to his XO or something like that, and they're like, yeah, he's lost.
Yeah, but you can't let that kind of way of communication become the norm.
Right.
And that's why he is adamant about what he reprimands that he gives in that moment. But that is at the Manor House. Yeah. So that's the first place we open up with. And a lot of that angst between David Schwimmer's character and Winter's character, that's all happening in Aldbourne. When he puts him up for court-martial, that's all happening in Aldbourne. So again, 8 months they're there. They're practicing, they're jumping. And this in that Band of Brothers, that's kind of that setting where they're flying over the village. And I show you kind of what the airfield looked like there from in the bar. They have a sketch of the airfield there. But that's why I wanted to go there. I kind of wanted to be there. And it really, like I said, it resonated to walk around and see where the officers' mess was, where the enlisted mess was, where the two bars, the Crown Bar where the enlisted hung out, the Blue Boar where the officers hung out. And then to go walk around and for Dick Winters, give him some of my focus from his memoir. He had written some personal stuff about his experience with the Barnes family there. And so I wanted to pay my respects to them.
Yeah.
So
that's when you see the video tomorrow, if you're watching tonight, tune in, subscribe and watch the video tomorrow, because it's really good. And we actually kind of did some homework hunting on YouTube. This is, of what we could find, this is one of the better Band of Brothers kind of Aldbourne focused videos that'll be out there. Walk us through some of the places in town that you were able to visit, because I know, like you mentioned, the bar, and you got to kind of go in there, a couple of the bars. Now there was some scenes from the bars in the movie. So
in the movie they show the Crown Bar in the show. I think they show the Blue Boar. Now I didn't get to go into the Blue Boar; it was closed. That's where the officers would hang out. And then the Crown Bar, where I got to go inside and film and show you everything that's on the wall, that was probably where the enlisted hung out. Okay. And then I went to High Point. Was it High Point? That's where the officers' mess was. So when the officers are all stationed there, they're all put in one Hightown Manor, Hightown House. They're all put in one house, but they're given the option, if you can find accommodations out in town, if you'd like to be with a family, if a family will put you up, you're more than welcome. And honestly, you and I both know, when you're spending 24/7 with a group of people, anytime you can take a break and have some normalcy to be on your own, you're going to take them up on that opportunity. And that's what happens with Dick Winters. And so I was able to find that Hightown house where all the officers were in the beginning, the Blue Boar, the Crown Inn, but I was able to find the Barnes house where when Dick Winters is taken in, him and Lieutenant Harry Welsh are both taken in by the Barnes family. They offer to take in two officers as long as one of them is Dick Winters, and I'll tell you more about why they were adamant. Like one of them had to be Dick Winters. They shared a room, but it's the window right above the cafe, and I show you that.
The post office, I think.
Yeah, it's a post office cafe, there. But at the cafe sign is the window right above it. And I actually went inside. It's a nice little store, So if you're in England, those stores are everything. They're the post office. They're the grocery store. Like if you need to do anything in town, you go to that store to do it. And so that's probably what the Barnes family was for the city. They probably were that kind of commerce for the people there. And so one of the places I really wanted to find, though, and I did find it, was the field.
That's right.
Where the huts were. So I think I say it, Nissen Huts?
Yeah, I think it's Nissen Huts.
Nissen Huts. So these are the huts that they built for the men. They're made out of corrugated metal, rounded, and then they put like the bunks in there. Yeah,
you can, for anybody who's watched war movies or even seen the Band of Brothers, right? You can kind of picture them. They really are that just kind of domed corrugated metal.
Easy to make.
Right, easy to make. Basic opening at the front.
Yes.
Right, and there's a couple, maybe a row of them or something like that.
And I think dirt floor.
Yeah, and very basic.
So I wanted to find that field because that's where they did most of their drilling.
Yep.
Marching around.
And there's pictures.
And there's
we
pictures
found
of them.
pictures.
So I could
We show
stand
pictures of
there.
it. Yeah.
hmm And there was a dig that was done. Some archaeologists did a dig there of the dirt of the floors of these huts to find artifacts, and they did. They found a ton of them, and we showed in the video just what their lives were like and what they discarded.
Yeah.
What people discarded in the 40s is funny. How people just throw things away.
Yeah.
Whatever, I'm done with this.
Yeah. I'm just gonna throw it off to
Fling it
throw
off
it off to
there.
the side there.
So, but there is some quotes. Malarkey. When he first sees the dome, he said there's a potbelly stove in the inside, and then the honey pots, the bathrooms, were right on the outside. And I'm reminding you, this is September to June, so freezing cold weather. And then Williams Wooden said that there were double deck bunks on both sides. And when they first got in there, they were exhausted. They had traveled all night. They were given like mattress covers, and they had to fill their mattresses with straw. So there was like a pile of straw. You filled your mattress and you threw it on a bunk and you went to sleep. And he said he was so tired.
Wow.
But that's what they had.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? Like, there you go.
Yeah. For the next 8 months,
For 8
that's what
months,
you're going to be
yeah.
sleeping on, that straw mattress.
So I can imagine if you're given the opportunity to go into someoone's home.
Sure.
And have a real bed,
Yeah.
you're going to take them
Like
up on it.
a real room. It's probably a little bit warmer in a house
Yeah.
than it is in these Nissen Huts.
Yeah.
And it was cool too. So one of the things that we show in the video that I was able to find, again, I think partly because Band of Brothers became so popular when the show came out, when the book came out, I'm able to find like old schematics. And
Yeah, that was neat.
that was really neat. And I even saw online, and I didn't put it in the video, but there's one Nissen Hut left. They actually moved it, and because someone was using it as like a workshop, or they were staying in it or something like
Yes.
that. But you can find pictures of this stuff, so it's really neat. And all the things that they found at this dig. So they did like an archaeological kind of style dig. Now, obviously, they didn't have to dig deep,
Yeah.
but they went out there and they kind of laid it out, and they cut everything up, and they were very kind of methodical about it. Mm-hmm. And we show some pictures of some of the things that they find, whether it's, a parachute handle or
They found some dog tags, and they found a pomade can.
a pomade can.
To do the pompadours. But I could see there where the dig was, because it was kind of more weedy.
Right.
Where the weeds had kind of grown in.
Yeah.
It's a soccer field now.
The dig was only 2 or 3 years ago. It was 2019. So that's how recent the study was, some of the pictures that I show.
But if you can walk out there, it was on Farm Lane. I kind of show you the two roads to get there. But it's a soccer field. You can stand there. You can stand right where Easy Company stood.
Yeah, and it's neat too, because someone from work that I work with actually just did like a full blown official Band of Brothers tour. Right, it took 2 or 3 weeks and went all over Europe visiting all these various Band of Brothers spots. And Aldbourne was one of the places that he went.
They usually start there.
Yeah, so they went there, and so I got to kind of talk to him about it, and we obviously, you were out there, I didn't get to go, but it was really cool to just kind of immerse myself when I was editing this video, kind of in that whole thing. And one of the things that I liked, the clip that was actually my favorite that I added in, was the officers in the bar when they were shooting darts. And if you ever remember the show, right, it's one of the officers there. He's like shooting darts, so he's doing this whole thing.
It's a good thing we weren't gambling, right?
Oh, boy, we would have gotten killed. You want to bet?
What?
You want to bet?
No,
Pack of smokes. Gambling.
Come on,
Another game.
I don't really know much about
Pack of
gambling.
smokes. Hey, come on.
First one to hit the bullseye?
Yeah, okay, one
First
shot.
one to hit the
One
bullseye,
shot.
one shot.
Sure, why not? Yeah?
Make it two.
Two packs.
Two packs.
Two packs. Two forks.
All right, two packs. Here we go.
Come on.
One shot. Here we go, George.
Lieutenant, you're going to shoot lefty all night?
Hey, come on.
Just curious, because he's right-handed.
George. What would I do without George Luz? Boop. Oh!
Goodness gracious.
Two packs, gentlemen.
I know you got it.
That was just fun. It's a good way. Seeing those clips. I mean, those guys actually, that's what they did while they were there.
Sure. I mean, you
For
have
8
all
months.
this time. You're getting paid.
Yeah.
And you have this time, and you're getting ready. That's the kind of what I really appreciated about that. And we'll get into what Dick Winter says too. This is really when you're forming your bonds with your people, because you're spending 24/7 with them. You're hanging out with them. You're laughing with them. You're drinking with them.
Yeah. I mean, that's your family for
At your family
for a time.
So this is where these strong shared hardships, shared bonds will come from that will be instrumental in battle. Right. And I think they show that well because, you play well together, you have fun together, and now you're going to go out and, fight together.
Right.
So I think that was a very cool part.
Yeah, it's very neat. Now, one of the last things that you visited while you were there actually was the church. Mm-hmm. It was like the St. Michael's Church and the cemetery that was right next to that. So what was significant about that?
So, Stephen Ambrose wrote Band of Brothers, and after he wrote it, this is when this group of men kind of became more, I wouldn't say popular, but into the public sphere a little bit more. And people wanted to know more about each of them and their lives. So Dick Winters wrote a memoir in 2006. And his memoir was Beyond Band of Brothers, the war memoirs of Major Dick Winters. And in that memoir, he talks about Aldbourne, and he talks about it being the most formative and development time of his career. And he credits that with the time he spent with the Barnes family because it gave him time to prepare to lead these men. And he gave him the downtime to focus on what they were defending and what did this mean? What did their sacrifice mean? So Dick Winters, when he first gets to Aldbourne, he goes to church, and he said he doesn't even remember the sermon. He just wanted to be alone in a place and think and reflect on what was to come, right? Because he's going to look at the Statue of Liberty. I think he's very reflective, and we can talk more about this as officers, this kind of responsibility you feel, right? And so he goes to church. He comes out of the church. I show you the bench he sits on. He goes over to the cemetery and he sits on a bench, and he notices a couple tending to a grave. And that couple comes over and talks with him. Well, they're the Barnes family. I don't know. It's Francis Barnes is the husband. I think the wife is Louisa.
Yeah, it was hard to see on the gravestone. You spelled it out, and it was almost like Louis, instead of Louise, but it's
not quite sure.
Kind of close enough.
But so they're tending to their son Leonard's grave, and their son died in the Battle of Britain, so just it
was about a year before
that happened, and so they strike up a conversation, and they had offered their home to take in 2 officers, but meeting Dick Winters and talking to Dick Winters, something resonated with them that they said they'll open their home to 2 officers as long as one of them was Dick Winters. And Dick Winters took him up on that, and he just loved being with the Barnes family. He said, they would come to his room at night and knock on the door and say the news is coming on. He'd go downstairs and have tea with them and listen to the news and read the newspaper, and he just felt like a very normal family life. And I think when you're so immersed in the military and the military way of life, to hold on to some normalcy somewhere, we can understand what that means.
Yeah, and I think one of the good things that you brought up too was, and I think you said that he mentioned this in his memoirs, was kind of seeing them and being with a family that's still grieving the loss of their son, a year after the fact, 18 months after the fact. It really resonated with him when he was writing these letters, or he would have to fill out the forms to notify, the families of the men that eventually, died that served under him.
That's your responsibility. And so he knew what kind of impact those things would have on a family and what that would look like to live with that kind of grief and that kind of loss, because he was experiencing it with the Barnes family as they were going through it. So it was a education for him, and I really appreciated that. And so I think I do talk about it in the video, what it means when you're an officer. And Scott, you're an officer, I was an officer, and leading people, and combat officer, so leading people into situations where it can be very dangerous and life and death. You have to be very confident and sure of what you're doing. You have to know what you're fighting for. You have to understand your tactics. You have to understand your decision making. You have to be the kind of person who makes a decision and goes with it. You can't be wishy-washy. You have to instill a lot of faith in your people. And Dick Winters was that person. And I think Band of Brothers does a good job of showing it sometimes where he's not sure. Yeah. And he doesn't know, but he can't, that can never seep in, right? You always have to be.
Well, and really what it comes down to is as a leader, right? And I think like you said, he shows it well on the show, but as a leader, right, and as someone I've been in for, oh my goodness, creeping up on 18, 20 years now, longer than I care to admit. But I've had, and I've never been, in combat, right? I've been on the ships, and I've done deployments and been in situations where you're kind of getting close to GQ. So I've been close to those situations, but nothing
general quarters.
Nothing ever like that. Never in the line of fire or anything personally. But one of the things as a leader, especially as an officer, when you're leading those men, is and I think that's why they spent so much time on training camp, and then in Aldbourne was so formative for, probably continued to be formative for the unit, because if you can show the people that are serving underneath you that you are there for them, for their safety, for their betterment, to make sure that they make it out the other side, or that you will do everything in your power to make it out, for them to make it out the other side, then they know, even in the times where you hesitate, that the decision that you do make, you're making the best call for them.
Yes.
They will trust you.
Yes.
And that's really what it comes through. It's not that you can't show hesitation, that you can't show weakness, because the one thing that is good, and what was amazing to me about the Barnes family and Major Winters saying how formative it was for him, when I was looking up stuff about Major Dick Winters, there was stuff all over the internet about his leadership and all the things that he does. And I think part of it, again, is because of the show, and you can pull examples. But think about that. Someone who's lauded as this exemplary leader in World War II, and this family, right, in this tiny little English town, had a major impact on how he handled himself and how he viewed leading these men during the war. It didn't really sink in with me until I kind of edited the video for numerous hours and then watched it a couple times and really realized, man, this family had an impact on this amazing man. I think Major Dick Winters passed away in 2011.
Yes, he did.
But some of the leadership lessons that you get from him is just absolutely incredible.
Exactly. And I love, you open with the quote, or you close with that quote, when his grandson asked him if he was a hero, and he goes, "No, but I served with heroes." And he's so humble. And I think to my opinion, the best officers are, because I think you really are your people. It's not you. You're your people. And like you said, if you're with your men the whole time, you do the runs with them. You're carrying a weapon with them. Everything you ask them to do, you can do, or you do beside them. That's when you start to instill this trust. He or she's not asking us to do something that they wouldn't do themselves, not putting us in harm's way without mission, right, or weighing all the options. And I just love that he said that, because to me, he still doesn't see himself as a hero. He sees the people he led as heroes, and they really answered the call.
Yeah.
Dick Winters is from Pennsylvania.
Is he really?
Close to Penn State.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, he had a farm in Hershey, PA.
Oh, my gosh.
And he's actually buried not too far from Penn State. And if you know me, my undergrad is from Penn State.
Yeah.
So just, again, it just really resonated with me. So that's why I went to that cemetery and sat on that bench and kind of wanted to get the perspective of Dick Winters in that moment. Now, the Barnes family has since passed away, and they are buried in that cemetery not far from their son. And Dick Winters had gone back later in life and for a Band of Brothers tour, and he had excused himself from the tour and went over to the grave and left flowers for them. So that's why I personally wanted to visit them as well, because of what they meant to him and because of what he means to me I wanted to come kind of full circle and pay my respects to them.
We've actually been anxiously awaiting kind of making this particular video, and we were saving it for closer to Veterans Day. So for the veterans out there, thank you for your service. And this video is kind of a little bit in memory of a well-known and lauded veteran. Thank you for listening to the Talk with History podcast, and please reach out to us at our website, talkwithhistory.com. But more importantly, if you know someone else that might enjoy this podcast, please share this with them, especially if you think that today's topic would interest a friend. Shoot them a text and tell them to look up the Talk with History podcast, because we rely on you, our community, to grow, and we appreciate you all every day. We'll talk to you next time.
Thank you.